Are you planning an Alaskan cruise vacation, but you're overwhelmed by all the details and options that go into planning one? Hi, my name is Trey Tracy and I'm a travel advisor, and I love helping my clients plan an Alaskan cruise vacation. For most of my clients, they are a first-time Alaskan cruiser and it's a bucket list and they don't know where to start, so they definitely rely on my expertise as one. And it's just a great discussion I get to have with my clients. And I understand there are a lot of options and a lot of details. It's not as simple as just getting on a Caribbean cruise and heading down to the Bahamas or heading down to the Caribbean. There are a lot of details that go into planning that Alaskan cruise. So I want to share with you my top 10 questions that I often get asked by clients who are planning Alaskan cruise vacation, in hopes that maybe it will help you when it comes to planning yours. Now be sure to watch all the way to the end, where I'm going to give you a bonus tip that will help you plan your next Alaskan cruise vacation. So let's get started. Number one, when is the Alaskan cruise season? The Alaskan cruise season, unlike a lot of Caribbean cruises, is a very short season. It typically goes from late April, early May into mid-September. And during that season, the peak portion of it's going to be about mid-June to mid-August, when most of the United States schools are out and families are up there traveling. So if you're looking for a little bit of a slower season, which there's really not for Alaska, but really the least busiest is going to be early in the cruise season or late in that Alaskan cruise season. Number two, what is the best cruise line? Now this one's a tough one to answer because I have my favorite and I am very careful about pushing that favorite on my clients. I like to listen to what they are looking to get out of that cruise, and then also look at the demographic. Are they a middle to older age client? They're traveling with or without children? Is it a family group looking for a lot of activities on board that ship? You know, all those kind of things come into play, and also certainly budget. Alaska cruises are not very cheap compared to Caribbean cruises, so if you're on a tighter budget, we have to look at certain cruise lines compared to those who are looking for that higher class or upper luxury, if you will, type of experience. Number three, what are the main itineraries? Now there are primarily two itineraries when it comes to planning that Alaskan cruise. Do you want the inside passage or do you want a Gulf voyage? Most of the inside passage itineraries will start from either San Francisco or Seattle, and those are usually round trip. The Gulf voyages typically start or end in Vancouver or Anchorage. And so the primary difference is those inside passage voyages are going to include one additional stop, typically in Victoria, British Columbia, and they may or may not include Glacier Bay National Park. Those northern or southern Gulf voyages typically do not include Victoria, British Columbia, and they will include Glacier Bay National Park. Now, there are primarily a 7-day and a 14-day cruise, and some cruise lines do offer a 4-day voyage. So just be upfront with your travel advisor what you're looking for and how long you're wanting to be on that cruise ship. Now that is just primarily the cruise portion when I say 7 and 14 days. That does not include a pre or post cruise tour option, which I'll talk to you about a little bit more later in this video. Number four, what are the ports of call? Primarily all itineraries are going to include Juneau, Ketchikan, and Skagway. Some itineraries may include Sitka, some may include Victoria, British Columbia, and some will either include Glacier Bay National Park. So if you have a preference on those cities, again, be upfront with your travel advisor so he or she can pick that right itinerary to help match with what you are looking for. Now, I will say each of those ports of calls there's some similarity, but there's also a lot of uniqueness amongst them. So you're going to get a different little flavor out of each port and really get a great experience in each one. So I don't think you could really pick a wrong port, and when I've done my Alaskan cruises, it was hard to pick a favorite because there was something unique about each of the cities. Number five, what is the best embarkation and disembarkation port? Well, again, it goes back to your itinerary, which one you're going to start and end at. The four main embarkation ports are going to be San Francisco, Seattle, Vancouver, and Anchorage. Now when I say Anchorage, the cruise ships don't necessarily go right into Anchorage. They go to one of two ports, typically either Whittier or Seward, which are about an hour to an hour and a half outside of Anchorage. So you have to ask yourself, is one of those embarkation ports or disembarkation ports a place that you might want to spend a little extra time in? So for example, you may want to spend a couple of days in Vancouver, so plan accordingly so your itinerary includes either on the front end or the back end that embarkation port. Same with Anchorage. You may want to spend some time in Anchorage or the surrounding cities, so make sure you have an itinerary that includes that. Now obviously you've got to go with the preset itineraries with the cruise lines, but there are all sorts of itineraries that you can choose from, so just be sure to mention that to your travel advisor. Before continuing, let me say if you are getting value out of this video, go ahead and tap that like button below and subscribing to my channel. I'd greatly appreciate your support. Number 6, should I do a cruise tour? Now that cruise tour, for those who are not familiar with what a cruise tour is a land package that is pre-designed by the cruise lines that you can do either pre or post cruise. Now most of the cruise tour packages are going to be into Anchorage or out from Anchorage, so you're not going to really do those in Seattle or Vancouver or San Francisco. So from the cruise tour packages, and again that's going to differ based on the cruise line, but those typically go up to Denali. You get to take the scenic rail. It may include some nights in Anchorage or in Fairbanks, just depending on the cruise tour package. So you can either do those on the front end by starting your cruise from within Alaska, or you can do it post-cruise by starting your cruise in Vancouver and ending in Anchorage. So just, if a cruise tour option is something you're thinking about, talk with your travel advisor and just know, obviously those are going to add to the price of your cruise vacation, and there are really no hard set days. You can do anywhere from 1 to 2 additional days up to 5 or 6 additional days. So there's all sorts of prepackaged options to add to that. But again, talk to your travel advisor and he or she can advise you accordingly to help match what you're looking for out of that cruise tour option. Number 7, what is the best side of the ship to stay on? Now, in my personal preference, I think you need to stay on the side facing the shore so you have more opportunity to see the beautiful landscape. Now, if you're taking a northern voyage from Vancouver to Anchorage, that's going to be the starboard side. If you're taking the southern voyage from Anchorage down to Vancouver, that's going to be the port side. If it's a round trip out of Seattle or even out of Vancouver, it's really not going to matter because you're going to get to see the land at some point coming or going. But if you don't get to snag a side of the ship that is facing the shore, or you really don't care, that is okay, because obviously you can go up on the upper decks at any time and get some great views up there. But for my clients, I typically like to advise that they stay on the side facing the shore. Now it's always hard to tell when they get into port what side the ship's going to be facing the port, because sometimes it just depends on when they get into port and where within that port they have to park the ship. But even when they're in port, both sides of the ship get some great views. Number 8, which room category should I book? Without a question, I always advise my clients to book a balcony stateroom. When you're going into port or coming out to port, you're going to want to be out looking at the beautiful scenery. And that is something you will not be able to see when you're in an interior stateroom unless you leave the comfort of your room to go on the upper deck and take in those views. But nothing like being able to sit out on your balcony with a cup of coffee first thing in the morning as that ship is sailing in, or in the late evening having a snack out on your balcony as the ship is sailing out from port. Now I will say the balcony staterooms are going to be more of the pricier side compared to obviously an ocean view or an interior stateroom. Now certainly depending on the cruise ship, there's going to be suites that you can pick from, which is certainly going to be even more expensive. But consider taking an ocean view, or rather take a balcony stateroom, especially if this is your first Alaskan cruise, to get more of that experience. Number 9, won't it be cold in Alaska? Well, like anywhere in the world, weather is very unpredictable. Yes, it's going to be cool, but it's not going to be unbearable. For example, in August of 2023, when I last went on Alaskan cruise, when all of the United States was baking under that terrible heat vortex, our average temperature up there, and again in late August, was roughly about upper 60s, lower 70s by midday, upper 40s, low 50s, and that's all Fahrenheit, in the evening. So yes, we certainly started out with a light jacket in the morning, but by midday, because I was wearing layers, I was able to be down into slacks or pants and a t-shirt. So definitely when you're packing for an Alaskan cruise, consider packing layers. You don't need heavy, bulky coats or anything like that, but you definitely going to want to take a raincoat or a windbreaker because it will be a little cool. And certainly it's going to be cooler in the early in the season, but as you get mid-season and late season, it's still going to be very comfortable. Just you need to pack accordingly. Now, if you are going to be on a Glacier Bay National Park itinerary, when you're upper deck on the days that that ship is sailing around within the bay, to me that was one of the coldest days, and I felt like I needed all the layers. But they also, our ship had blankets and hot chocolate, so it was very manageable, but it definitely was one of the coldest days of our itinerary. So be sure to check the weather before you depart for your Alaskan cruise so you'll know how to pack accordingly. Number 10, will I see the Northern Lights on my cruise vacation? Now this is one that I think I get asked quite a lot about because people don't really understand about the Northern Lights. Northern Lights, just like weather, can be very unpredictable, and certainly there is a peak season within the Northern Lights viewing time, and that's usually about mid to late November into late March, early April, with the peak I think being about late February to early April. So yes, there's always that opportunity that you could see the Northern Lights, but the odds are probably not. The best viewing of the Northern Lights is going to be further into the state, say up towards Fairbanks. But on my cruise, you could see a hint of the Northern Lights, but only through the lens of a camera. We were not able to see it with our naked eyes. So I would not plan on an Alaskan cruise being the optimal time to see a Northern Lights experience. But if you do get that chance, that is just a bonus for your cruise. But just don't go in with that expectation because most likely you're going to come out disappointed not being able to see the Northern Lights. Now obviously if you add a cruise tour onto your cruise on the pre or the post side of your cruise and you're further into the state, especially up towards Denali and stuff, then yeah, you might get a chance to see the Northern Lights. But again, the cruise season for Alaska is not during the peak portion of the Northern Lights viewing time. Now, before I continue on to the bonus tip, do you have a question when it comes to planning an Alaskan cruise vacation? If so, post those down in the comments and I'll be glad to help answer that for you. Now, if you're needing a travel advisor to help plan your Alaskan cruise adventure, look no further. I would love to help you. You can find my contact information down in the description below, and it all starts with a complimentary consultation call. Now for my bonus tip when it comes to planning that Alaskan cruise vacation, and that is when is the best time to book an Alaskan cruise. Now, as I stated, that cruise season runs from about late April to mid-September, depending on the cruise line. Alaskan cruises, for the last couple of years, it's been such a great demand, and keep in mind, these are not mega ships that you would see coming out of Orlando or Miami that have 6,000 and 7,000 passengers on them. These ships average about 2,400 to 3,000 passengers on them. So they're much smaller ships, and each cruise line is going to have several ships that they're running in the Alaskan market, but because those are smaller ships and it is a shorter season, they do sell out quickly. So I typically advise my clients they need to be booking an Alaskan cruise about 9 months to almost a year out. So for example, the 2024 season opened fall of 2022. So a little over a year and a half out is when most of these cruise lines release their inventory for sale for a year and a half out. So we're obviously booking well into 2025 now. The 2025 cruise season started selling fall of 2023. So keep that in mind, and as the closer you get to the cruise season, that's not to say we can't book you, but as I advise my clients, you're going to have to take what's left. And let's face it, Alaskan cruise vacation is not cheap. So do you want to spend all that money and have to take a pick of what's left? Which means you may not get the excursion you want, you may not get the optimal stateroom that you were hoping for, you may not even get the itinerary you were looking for. So the closer that we get to the summer season for the Alaskan cruise market, so when we roughly get down to less than 6 months before the season, I really start advising clients either be very flexible and understand you're going to have to take what's left, or let's plan further into the next year where there are more options and you have longer to pay for your cruise vacation. Do all these questions have you ready to plan your Alaskan cruise adventure? If so, remember, I would love to help you if you need the assistance of a travel advisor. My website's right down below in the description, and you can get more information about my services and also to be able to schedule your free consultation today. Now, thank you for watching.